box number, one box number
15.
What's in your box? Well, this week we've been down to the coast to gather wild edibles for you, and in this week's wild box, 4 out of the 7 ingredients actually come from either in the sea or next to the sea. So we've been scrabbling around on the rocks to get you some dulse. So we're here at the turn of the tide harvesting this red seaweed. It's not a red seaweed, and we can only harvest this at the lowest tides, which is just 2 or 3 times a month. Now dulse is probably my favourite seaweed, mainly because it's one that you can use just on its own. It stands up in its own right. Kids in Ireland used to eat dried dulse, so just carry it around in their pockets, and they'd eat that instead of potato crisps. And I can tell you, my own kids will just devour this if I leave it lying around on the table. And then it gets better still if you toast it. The flavours get richer and richer, lovely umami flavour, almost like a vegan bacon. And in the rock pools, to get you some sea lettuce, and this is a seaweed of the upper tidal zone, and that means the bit that's going to be exposed as the tide first begins to go back. So it's green, and with all the seaweeds, the colour of the pigment of the seaweed reflects what kind of light that seaweed is mainly photosynthesizing. And oddly enough, it's every kind of light except the colour that it is. So this seaweed is photosynthesizing everything but the green light. It's nicely attached to this chalk here, but everywhere else on this beach, because we've had a storm, there's just sea lettuce everywhere. It's all been blown up, it's all been sort of washed off by the storm. So just taking my new flint knife there and just cut it off. We never tear it from the rock because we want it to be able to grow back. So we leave the thing that attaches it to the rock, called the holdfast, in place. And this is just a nice textured seaweed without a particularly strong flavour, but it's lovely colour and texture, slight flavour of the sea. We're going to have this in an edamame bean and mackerel salad this week. On the rocks, the third of our 3 seaweeds for this week is Carrageenan. That's a seaweed of the lower tidal zones, which means it stays under the water until the nearly lowest tide. And although it's looking rather brown, it is technically classed as a red seaweed, which means it harvests every bandwidth of light except red. Well known as a gelling agent, very similar to the seaweed from which agar-agar is extracted. But Carrageenan is a product in its own right. It shows up, a gelling agent of the same name, shows up in all sorts of things such as toothpaste and ice cream. But what we're going to do with this is we're going to make a traditional Irish pudding called a Carrageenan pudding, which is a bit like a blancmange. So a bit further up the beach we have this lovely aromatic wild fennel flowers, and these umbrella shaped arrangements of flowers are very typical of the carrot family. And then you see they break down. That's actually called an umbel, and if you break it down, that's called an umbellule, and even that is got smaller constituent parts, the little individual fennel flowers. And you can break these up, and they are, not surprisingly, intensely fennel flavored, slightly sweet. And so you have these little flavor bombs that you can put through a dessert, through a salad, or into a sauce or anything like that. But they really hold their flavor, and when you crunch down on them, they release that beautiful fennel flavour.
And then it was back down to the river for water celery. So the plant books all call this plant fool's watercress, and there is a reason for that. It looks kind of similar to watercress and grows in the same place. So just over here we've got some watercress, but the real distinguishing feature that's easy to learn is that the edge of the leaflets on the watercress, they're kind of wavy, but they're not toothed. Whereas if you look at the water celery, there's distinct kind of toothing right around the edge of the leaflets here.
And then a more land-based herb, once again we have mugwort.
So there's actually a lot that's familiar with this spice. The chemistry of it is really interesting because there's links with sage and rosemary. It has camphor in it, which is one of the main flavors in rosemary, and it has a thing called eucalyptol, which is found in sage. But as the name suggests, it's also found in eucalyptus trees, so it's the main thing that a koala bear will be eating all day. And I just think it's amazing that we have familiar things right under our noses that we just walk past every day. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun finding out what sort of things you can use this for. This week we've got a Carrageenan pudding that's flavoured with mugwort. And then our last ingredient this week is from Wales, and unfortunately we didn't manage to get you footage of on location, but it's bilberries or blaeberries or whortleberries. So we hope to have our forager in Wales film this and talk to you about it next week.
Warbot number
15.